The second ChemX speaker of the afternoon is Dr. Shannon Ciston. Shannon is the continuing lecturer and director of undergraduate education in our Department of Chemical and Biomolecular Engineering. She teaches and coordinates undergraduate curricular matters in our Chemical and Biomolecular Engineering Department, CBE department. She holds a PhD from Northwestern University and a BS from Illinois Institute of Technology, both in chemical engineering. At Berkeley, she has taught courses from the freshman to graduate level, including Chemical Engineering Laboratory, Introduction to Chemical Engineering Design, Technical Communications, and Pedagogy. Her research in the engineering education domain focuses on the development of professional skills and the experiences of non-traditional engineering students. And in her spare time, she enjoys fostering a love of learning with her preschool-aged children. Shannon's ChemX talk today is entitled Teaching Engineering Ethics with Our Stories. Shannon.
Thank you. All right, thanks a lot for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation to be here to speak with you all today. So the topic that I've chosen to talk about is an intersection between my teaching space and then also my engineering education research space to talk about engineering ethics. So this is a question that I have used to train students on behavioral interview techniques in the technical communications course. So you can see that it asks students to consider an ethical dilemma that they have experienced and then the action that they take in that situation and the outcome. As often as not, an individual student is stumped. When have they experienced an ethical dilemma? Well, I'm here to argue today that we as faculty members and as alums should be using our own stories to teach ethical engineers of tomorrow. So I've had the pleasure to teach engineering ethics from freshman level through seniors, and I think that engineering ethics is something that we can all agree is important. Ethical decision-making and ethical action are hallmarks of the engineering profession. When you look at metrics such as reports to federal whistleblower hotlines, engineers are among the professions that are most highly represented with the frequency there, putting us in some interesting company. And we can all agree that, that we want people who are designing fuels, foods, pharmaceuticals to have a strong moral compass. And that value of the profession is reflected in codifying that commitment to ethical action, ethical decision-making through codes of ethics like this one from the American Institute of Chemical Engineers. And these codes are very common. So NSPE, National Society of Professional Engineers, American Society of Civil Engineers also have similar codes. Where we talk about how we hold paramount the safety, health, and welfare, what it means to have a commitment to our clients, to the public, to our employers, and to each other. And so when you look to the engineering education space for methods or tools for teaching engineering ethics, there are many. They range everywhere from using films to things like this helpful article from a professional engineering in chemical engineering who goes through steps in formulating an ethical action plan when faced with an ethical dilemma, especially with advice for brand new engineers who may be in a power differential situation when they're being called to that ethical action. Or this take on teaching engineering ethics, which is a variation on the Cards Against Humanity, or sorry, is that right? Yes, Cards Against Humanity game, to have kind of a tongue-in-cheek, engaging discussion to help students get a little bit more comfortable in that space. I really like to use case studies. This online ethics center has really a wealth of materials contributed by a lot of different sources in engineering education space. And so I have used either as written or oral assignments in the course that I taught in technical communications and professionalism to teach ethics. So some of them are nuanced enough that they don't have one correct or specific perfect right answer, and allow you to bring out different angles of the discussion. So this is one example. This is a case study challenging an engineer to make a choice about design for a new dialysis machine. And so it presents engineers with these trade-offs. It brings out concepts of safety, training for user personnel, funding sources, waste generation, and then this whole idea of the scope or window of engineering design, which I understand is a really important skill set to be able to decide what is that design window, how broad can we make it, how it's in tension with the different considerations. Or this one on heat transfer calculations that allows you to bring out the fact that there's a difference between the letter of the law and the spirit of the law, where this case study has a new set of regulations that are rolling out that won't be in place when the building is scheduled to be done, but then you also get to bring out the fact that most building projects go over time and over budget. So what does that mean for the decision that you make? And some hit pretty close to home. So this one, for example, on taking a position of influence, is about a new assistant professor who is asked to serve on a review panel for an opportunity for which they also were planning to submit a proposal. And it resonated with me from an experience I had 10 years ago as a new assistant professor as well. So I think there's power in those stories that do resonate with us as teachers, and then of course with our students as well. The incident that happened in Bhopal, India in the 80s has generated many such case studies that you can find in the engineering education space. And it's a heart-wrenching story. And I really like using this movie, Bhopal, A Prayer for Rain, which came out a few years ago, because it allows you to connect with the people that were involved, not only the victims, but also the various actors. Students can find themselves in the multi-dimensional portrayal of characters such as the CEO for Union Carbide, safety engineers, process engineers who were under a lot of pressure to continue to produce with less and less resources. Case studies are powerful teaching tools, and I argue that this more powerful subset of case studies is our own case studies, our own stories. And why? Some research on students learning about ethics shows that students are not always convinced that faculty themselves are committed to ethical action, and that the role of faculty members is very important in communicating how important it is. So in my research group, sometimes we are studying the professional identity development. How does a student develop an identity as a professional engineer? And one classic model for professional identity development is this 4-stage model. First stage being anticipatory, so someone hears about engineering through maybe the Engineering Go For It magazine or Lego Robotics, or maybe they have a neighbor who's an engineer. This formal stage typically happens in the college context, so you're learning from faculty members from your courses what are the expectations of being an engineer. The informal stage typically happens in things like internships, where you're in sort of more of an industrial context, and you pick up on cues about small things like what do engineers wear, how do engineers talk to operators, things like that. And then this personal stage is this final stage where there's an integration of your own personal identity with the identity of an engineer. That's the stage at which someone says, yes, I'm an engineer. So a recent study found that students report learning about professionalism primarily in this informal stage, interactions with parents, coworkers, and rarely by their technical courses, rarely through interactions with faculty members. So they're not, the faculty members of the courses are not the dominant mode for teaching professionalism, including ethics. Ethics training is sometimes characterized as boring or not engaging for students, or sometimes too abstract because they might feel so removed from the case at hand. So academic integrity is a very well-studied, very common example that people use to teach ethics. And so there's a lot of interesting work there. It's because it's this familiar, concrete example, and then also researchers have a lot of access to data about academic integrity. Recent meta-study shows that there are often differences between student perceptions of academic integrity and faculty perceptions of academic integrity. Slightly different definitions of what does it mean to cheat, what does it mean to help someone, what is an okay resource to use. And when you look at this question of why do students cheat or why would they have violations against academic integrity, the faculty role really comes out. So there are a broad range of things that go into that academic integrity decision making. They range everything from patterns in demographics, like an older student versus a younger student having a different propensity to cheat. But faculty members also come through. They find that in schools that implement honor codes explicitly, the honor codes are most effective when the faculty members know what that honor code is, engage with their students about what the expectations are, and then actually report the violations, which is maybe not as common as you might think. And that a lack of faculty concern or a faculty apathy is found to be an influencing factor in people having academic integrity violations more often. So the faculty role is actually important. I think that the potential to make ethics stories personal can address a number of these things. When we share our own stories, one thing that we can do is we can bring in elements of that informal training that often happens with coworkers or in the industrial context, training about what does it mean to be a professional into this formal context. So when we are the role model for teaching ethical engineers by sharing what our experiences and actions were. I think it also has the potential to make case studies more concrete and more dynamic. You can add layers of context. A lot of times when you use these case studies, a student's response to it will say, well, it kind of depends, because there's so much we don't know, right? In one page, how much of it can you summarize? But if it was something that you lived, you know, what are the influences that caused the job ad to be written a certain way, or what was the conversation that happened in that room, and what really happened there? So it can create for a more dynamic engagement with that. And then I think it really underscores that there is a commitment on the part of faculty as members of the profession to ethical action. So to that end, I have started gathering faculty stories that we can use. So of course I know my own stories and I can tell my own stories, but I think that having them gathered together could create opportunities for sharing. Maybe GSIs could use it, maybe you could use the case study as written to supplement a discussion that's going on, or maybe there might be a specific connection to a different faculty member's experience that you want to draw on. So I've begun to do that, and I'm using a working name of Ethics at CBE, but that could evolve. I think it's important to note that these are anonymized, so I want you to be able to share your own story, but I want you to have control over that space. So the things that I'm recording strip away specific names of just what place did that happen, and just who did it happen to, and just what year did it happen, so that it can be a little freer. I'm accepting submissions now, so if you're interested in contributing to that project, you can email me or track me down. And I want to say we have so many people here who are students or alumni, and I'd love to hear your stories too, if you'd like to share as part of that project. All right, thank you very much for your time today. you.